Chapter 449. Animal Tricks. Yu Qianqiu was taken aback. He immediately thought of the words animal tricks, but felt that it had tarnished his future student. Hence, he quickly thought of the 5 animal tricks he had heard of in his previous life. It seemed that the fellow named Hua Tuo had also created these tricks based on animals. He immediately felt more at ease. This disciple shall diligently comprehend them. Yu Qianqiu immediately bowed and retreated. When he found out that the world of animals in this jade archive would be of great benefit to him, he made up his mind to learn them, and he would learn them with all his might. He didn't have many good points, but he was able to endure hardships and was ruthless to himself. He comforted himself by saying that this was called making up for one's lack of talent with diligence. Once he left, Zi couldn't stay still any longer. She dawdled to Bai Changchun's side and stammered, "Senior Bai, my master has already gone to invite the southern Ming ancestor for you. Can Zi learn the animal tricks you taught Yu Qianqiu?" Towards the end, she seemed to feel a little embarrassed, and her voice was so soft that it was almost inaudible. Fortunately, Bai Changchun's cultivation level was high, and his hearing was good as well. He nodded at her. Zi was so happy that she almost jumped up. She quickly bowed and said, "Zi thanks Senior Bai for his help. Zi will take her leave now." After she finished speaking, she slipped away and went to look for Yu Qianqiu. Bai Changchun smiled, then went to his usual seat and sat down cross-legged. Actually, when Nongzhu suggested letting Zi learn, he had never thought of rejecting her due to their relationship. Otherwise, with the things that Yu Qianqiu had obtained from the gate of the underworld, it wouldn't be difficult for him to invite the southern Ming ancestor. Hence, he wasn't trying to make things difficult for Nongzhu. It was just that his cultivation level was passable, and his speed was fast, so he asked him to run errands. Once Ce left, she quickly looked around. It had only been a short while, but Yu Qianqiu was nowhere to be seen. How dare he try to hog all the good stuff for himself? How infuriating! He couldn't possibly have escaped from Shuntian Island, could he? Thus, he quickly rose into the sky and circled around in all directions, but he did not see anyone. Given that fellow's cultivation, even if he were to fly away in such a short period of time, it would be impossible for him to escape his line of sight. He immediately deduced that Yu Qianqiu must be hiding somewhere on the island, so he launched a carpet search. Yu Qianqiu had long known that this little girl would not let him go. For the sake of freedom, he hid in the bird's nest that he had built in the past. He held the jade archive in his hands and studied it in detail. Once he had a rough idea of what was going on, he would begin to practice madly. Helplessness Island was only so big, so Zi quickly locked onto the bird's nest. With a flash, she leaped into the nest to take a look. Sure enough, this fellow was hiding here, hugging the jade archive and enjoying it all by himself. "What are you doing here?" Yu Qianqiu cautiously put away the jade archive. "Give it to me." Zi reached out her hand and demanded without hesitation. "Take what?" Yu Qianqiu pretended not to know. Zi glared at him and said, "Hurry up and hand over Elder Bai's animal tricks. Elder Bai has already agreed to let me learn it." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Since she dared to say such words on Obedient Island, his master must have really agreed to it. However, he had yet to learn it. If he gave it to her first, when would it be his turn? He immediately rejected her. "Nonsense. Wait until your master brings the Nanming ancestor here. Are you going to give it to me or not?" Zi gritted her teeth, as if she was about to snatch it from him. Yu Qianqiu's expression darkened. "Don't get it wrong. This is Obedient Island, not your purple bamboo forest in the southern seas. It's not your place to be unreasonable. If you dare to cause trouble, my master will kick you out of Obedient Island." His words were a little threatening, but to Zi, it was quite effective. "You Ze said angrily, then come with me to reason with Elder Bai. Why should I? My master passed it down to me. Even if you want to learn it, I have to finish learning it first before you can learn it. Yu Qianqiu started to act shamelessly. Although Bai Changchun was sitting in the big house, he knew everything that was going on. Obedient Island hadn't been this lively for a long time. He shook his head and transmitted his voice, Yu Qianqiu, make a copy for her. Yu Qianqiu, who was about to start a big fight, was stunned. He helplessly bowed towards the big house and said, yes, disciple understands. He then turned back to Ze and snorted, my master is merciful and asked me to make a copy for you. Don't mess with me anymore. If I make a mistake, don't blame me. Ze was also stunned. She immediately understood that Bai Changchun transmitted his voice to Yu Qianqiu, so she also bowed in the direction of the big house. Truth be told, Yu Qianqiu was very displeased. He had painstakingly gone through life and death situations to get to where he was today. It wasn't easy for him to get something from the master of the world's #1 expert. This girl who got in through the back door insisted on sharing the fruits of his labor. It was really infuriating. However, there was nothing he could do about it. He could only take out 2 jade archives and obediently make a copy. After handing the jade archives to Ze, he didn't forget to remind her, Ze, you must remember this well. These are my master's hard work. You can't just pass them on to others. Yes, yes, yes. I understand. I won't let Elder Bai's hard work fall into the hands of others. After Ze received the jade archives, she was very satisfied. At the same time, she thought that Bai Changchun had asked Yu Qianqiu to pass on the message. She decided to carry it out loyally. We need some peace and quiet now. Please don't disturb me anymore. Yu Qianqiu gestured towards the outside of the bird's nest. Ziyi's face was filled with excitement as she grasped the jade archives. With a swoosh, she dashed out of the nest and found a place to comprehend it on her own. Yu Qianqiu finally felt at ease and came to see her. In the end, he found himself hiding in the bird's nest for an entire day and night, forgetting to eat and sleep. Cultivators in the world of cultivators, after more or less training, had a much higher ability to comprehend things than mortals. Yu Qianqiu fumbled around for an entire day before he finally understood the gist of it. The contents of this jade archive were quite different from what he knew in the world of cultivators. It was similar to the martial arts that evolved from the animals he knew in his previous life. However, there were far more types of martial arts than those he had seen in his previous life. This jade archive recorded over 1,000 representative animal movements. After he transformed into his human form and practiced, Bai Changchun added a path for the circulation of his true core to each set of diagrams, perhaps in order to make his movements more similar to those of an animal. He must have put in a lot of effort. Yu Qianqiu was truly impressed by this master of his. He dared to guarantee that this set of diagrams was not only beneficial to cultivators, it could also be used by mortals to strengthen their bodies. It was as if he had created a form of fitness exercise. He just didn't know how effective it would be after he practiced it. Was it really as miraculous as he said? But for the time being, he had to believe it. Who told him to be the #1 expert in the world? Without the flame-deficient profound fruit, the soft, flat, and spacious plantation had become a good place for him to practice his martial arts. After memorizing a few sets of corresponding true core circulation paths, he practiced with tigers, eagles, snakes, monkeys, and so on. He seemed to be enjoying himself, but in his heart, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Was this something that a cultivator should be doing? However, he didn't know that when his actions fell into Bai Changchun's eyes, Bai Changchun was greatly shocked. An ordinary person would find it hard to accept something that he had created himself. He was afraid that it could be described as unreasonable. He didn't expect that Yu Qianqiu would be able to practice it so quickly. Moreover, he was able to practice it well. Moreover, his body and spirit were similar. On Obedient Island, no matter how secluded she was, how could she escape Bai Changchun's discerning eyes? After silently observing for a while, Bai Changchun, who was sitting cross-legged in the big house, shook his head and sighed. Compared to his disciple, Yu Qianqiu, Ziyi's comprehension ability was far inferior. He was afraid that even after a long time of grinding, he still wouldn't be able to grasp the essence of the technique. The more Ziyi practiced, the more uncomfortable she felt. She felt as though she was about to collapse. She thought, why isn't it like what Yu Qianqiu is practicing, where he has both body and spirit? Could it be that Senior Bai is teaching him in secret? That must be it. Otherwise, why would I be inferior to him when everyone is practicing at the same time? This won't do. I must look for Yu Qianqiu to practice with me. If there's anything I don't understand, I'll pester him to teach me. Chapter 450. Xian Island was also in the East Sea, but it was very far away. It was located in the middle of the vast sea. Although it was isolated, its name was well known to some people because the owner of the island was one of the 4 great men of the cultivation world, Nanming ancestor. His craftsmanship was extraordinary, and he was the one and only craftsman in the cultivation world. Countless experts in the cultivation world had bent down to beg him for a treasure refined by him. Even the #1 expert in the world, Bai Changchun, was no exception. Between the blue sea and the blue sky, there was a vast continent that was shrouded in white fog all year round. Even the wind could not blow it away. Speaking of the name of this continent, it was more famous in the cultivation world than Xian Island. The cultivation world called it the Holy East Land. Because it was not far from the Holy East Land, Xian Island was shrouded in white fog all year round. It was difficult to see the whole island clearly. However, it was different from the calm Holy East Land. Shrouded in white fog, Xian Island shone with red light all year round, dyeing the white fog red. The sound of metal hitting never stopped. High up in the sky, Nongzhu stood with his arms folded, staring at the endless Holy East Land shrouded in white fog. A rare look of caution appeared on his angular face. Thinking that Bai Changchun might not be able to return after entering this place, he could not help but sigh. Although he understood, he still could not figure out why Bai Changchun had to do this. Was he tired of living? Was it not good to live a carefree life? Why did he have to pursue so many things? Looking at Xian Island shrouded in red fog, Nongzhu took out a purple and black bamboo flute. The flute hole was placed horizontally by his lips, and his 10 fingers vibrated. In an instant, the melodious sound of the flute drifted from the blue sky to the vast sea. Not long after, from the red fog below, a deafening roar of a dragon suddenly came. A red light pierced through the red fog and shot toward Nongzhu at an extremely fast speed. Nongzhu put away his flute with a smile. As the red light approached, he saw that it was a huge red flying dragon with a wingspan of nearly 20 meters and a body length of nearly 20 meters. The man and the dragon stopped in the air and stared at each other. The wyvern had a ferocious appearance and a huge body. Sharp claws were spread out under its 2 strong thighs, and its long tail was swaying gently. A pair of fleshy wings were flapping in the wind, and its whole body was hairless and bright red. It stared at Nongzhu fiercely with bright eyes and flew higher than Nongzhu. As it breathed, it spat out provocative flames from time to time. Looking at the man and the dragon, it seemed that this was not the first time they had met. The relationship between the two of them did not seem to be very good. This was the mount of Nanming ancestor, the fire dragon. If Yu Qianqiu saw it, he would definitely be very surprised. This was exactly the same as the dragons in the Western legends in his previous life. Roar! The flying dragon suddenly roared at Nongzhu. It then spat out a ball of fierce fire towards Nongzhu. Little bastard, you're so vengeful. You're asking for a beating. Nongju shouted. A transparent protective upstanding chi gushed out, and the fierce flame was not damaged at all. The flute in his hand turned into a huge shadow, and he swung it at the ferocious dragon's head. Bang! After a loud sound, there was a cry of pain. The fire in the wyvern's mouth could no longer be spat out, but its whole body pounced towards Nongju, and its fierce claws went straight for her. Little bastard. Nongju chuckled and teleported away. She stood on the huge head of the wyvern, grabbed the horn on its head with one hand, and hit its head with the flute. Immediately, there was a chaotic roar in the air. The wyvern spun and dived down. It swung its head to both sides, hoping to get rid of Nongju. With Nongju's cultivation, how could she get rid of him? No matter how the angle changed, Nongju stood firmly on the top, and hit the wyvern with the flute in his hand again and again. Suddenly, there was a sudden sound of wind from both sides. The black armor spikes at the end of the two huge fleshy wings fiercely stabbed towards each other. Little bastard, you've learned to play dirty. Sneak attack. Nongju quickly dodged, and once again shot up into the sky. Although the wyvern was huge, its speed was extremely fast, and its strength was also very strong. Ordinary cultivators at the end of the heavens test were no match for it. In addition, its skin was rough and its flesh was thick, so it was very resistant. The strength of Nongju's flute just now could even collapse a small mountain, but this fellow was not hurt at all. It could be seen how resistant it was. However, it was not that Nongju could not deal with it, and it was not difficult to kill it. The key was that if he killed the Mount of Elder Nanming, the old man would definitely fight him to the death. Therefore, he could only teach it a lesson, not kill it. Who bullied my mount? A loud shout came from Xian Island, shaking the sky. Hearing this, the wyvern immediately became spirited, and quickly chased up into the sky, as if it would not stop until it was dead. In the sky, Nongju shouted coldly, "Old man Nanming, don't give me that. Don't tell me you don't know who I am. If you don't ask your little bastard to stop, I guarantee that your Xian Island will have more meat than you can eat for a month." Immediately, a depressed shout came from below, "Hong Hong, come back." Hearing this, the wyvern roared at Nongju to express its unwillingness, and quickly turned around and rushed back into the red mist. Nongju waved her hand in greeting. The voice came again, "Nongju, what are you doing here?" "Of course I'm looking for you." Nongju smiled and flew down. The person below seemed to remember something unpleasant, and immediately shouted angrily, "Get lost. I don't welcome you here." "Hey! Do you think I want to come to this place where even birds don't shit? I was forced to come here under Bai Changchun's orders. Bai Changchun asked you to come find me." After the person below asked, there was no more sound. Nongju passed through the red mist and landed on the island. The entire Xian Island was not small, and it was located like a cone. Although it was called an island, it was actually no different from a mountain. The upper half was bare, and there were almost no weeds. There were many holes dug by people. However, the lower half was densely wooded, and it looked verdant. Nongju looked around, and suddenly laughed, "Nanming old man, long time no see." She walked towards an old man not far away, wearing only a pair of red underpants. The old man was barefooted, and his face was old, but he had a body full of strong muscles, and his skin was bronze. His face was full of beard, and every strand of hair stood straight, like a hedgehog. The most spectacular thing was that his hair, beard, and eyebrows were all scarlet red, and his underpants were also red. He really looked like a strange person. The red wyvern was sitting obediently behind him. "It doesn't matter if we never meet again." Nanming Patriarch snorted. "Hey! Old man, you're so stingy. Didn't I just eat some of your food?" But then again, the seed of your fiery rock vajra tasted really good. It was really a delicacy in the world, and it left an endless aftertaste. Besides, I wasn't the only one who ate it. As Nongju spoke, she licked her lips and looked around, as if she was looking for that fiery rock vajra. When he heard this, Nanming Patriarch's eyes widened, and he suddenly turned around to glare at the wyvern behind him. Although the wyvern was huge, it looked like a child who had done something wrong, and it hung its head down resentfully. If you have anything to say, just say it. I don't have the patience to chat with you. Nanming Patriarch roared. At this moment, a young man and woman walked out of the cave on the island. The woman held a robe in her hands, and the man held a pair of hemp shoes. They helped Nanming Patriarch put them on. TSK. Nanming old man, I heard that you took in 2 more disciples. Are they these 2? Nongju looked at the man and woman, and realized that they were quite handsome, much better looking than Nanming Patriarch. She couldn't help but smile, and said, I'm Nongju from the South Sea's Purple Bamboo Forest. You 2 juniors can come to my place to play when you're free. My place is much prettier than your Xian Island. When the woman saw such a handsome and elegant person like Nongju staring at her, she couldn't help but blush. She looked away shyly, and when she suddenly heard that this person introduced himself as Nongju, she was immediately stunned. She exchanged a glance with the man and immediately stood behind Nanming ancestor without looking sideways, ignoring Nongju. The 2 of them had heard from their senior brothers and sisters that this person was one of the people their master hated the most. It was said that the fiery rock vajra on the island was laying eggs, and coincidentally, Nongju came. When their master wasn't paying attention, this person colluded with the fire dragon to steal and eat the eggs, almost causing the fiery rock vajra on the island to go extinct. After that, he ran away, and the fire dragon was severely punished by their master. I say, Nanming old man, why is your disciple as rude as you? He didn't even greet his senior, Nongju said unhappily. Stop talking nonsense. Is it because the flame-deficient profound fruit on Obedient Island has matured, and Bai Changchun sent you to find me? Nanming Patriarch asked as he tidied up his clothes. It seemed that he was ready to go to Obedient Island at any time. Nongju heard this and immediately laughed, don't mention the flame-deficient profound fruit. Old Bai was too excited and let out a long roar. As a result, the entire Obedient Island was in a mess, and all the flame-deficient profound fruits were destroyed. Bai Changchun was too excited. Nanming Patriarch was stunned. He couldn't understand. For someone like Bai Changchun, his state of mind was as calm as ancient water. It would be difficult for anything to stimulate him. Hee. It's all because of that precious disciple of his. One old and one young, 2 madmen together, they are a perfect match. Nongju said with a wink. Her expression seemed to be telling Nanming Patriarch that he should go and take a look. Is it that person called Healy? Nanming Patriarch was filled with anger just now, but now that Nongju's curiosity was aroused, he couldn't help but ask again. Healy. You still remember him? Nongju paused and shook her head. That guy was too cautious. How could he be qualified to be Old Bai's precious disciple? He was already killed by Old Bai's current disciple. Old Bai's current disciple is incredible. He's a complete troublemaker, but Old Bai still treats him like a treasure. Bai Changchun took in a disciple? Nanming Patriarch was also a little surprised. He then realized that the conversation had gone off topic. He frowned and said, since the flame-deficient profound fruit has been destroyed, why did he still ask you to find me? My rules can't be broken, or there will be endless trouble. You should go back and ask him to plant the flame-deficient profound fruit again. I won't see you out. He directly asked the guest to leave. Chapter 451. Nongju immediately rolled her eyes and said, Nanming old man, we are friends. You don't have to be so ruthless after eating something from you. Friends. Nanming ancestor snorted, have you ever seen a friend who steals from a friend? Nongzhu looked at the two disciples behind him and opened her mouth, speechless. She awkwardly took out the sky-swallowing beast's fang and waved it in her hand. I know your stupid rules. You should also know old Bai's character. He won't make things difficult for you. What do you think of this? Xian Island was a volcanic island, so the temperature where everyone stood was quite high. However, once the black fang was taken out, the surrounding temperature suddenly dropped a few degrees, and an inexplicable eerie feeling rose from Nongzhu's hand. Nanming ancestor's head, which was looking at the sky, slowly turned around stiffly. His gaze fell on the fang, and his eyes gradually narrowed into a line, unable to move away. Nongzhu's slightly tense expression relaxed. Her eyebrows twitched, and the corner of her mouth curled into a smile. She was worried that this fellow's standards were too high, and he wouldn't take her seriously. Now it seemed that she could successfully complete old Bai's task. Can you do it or not? Just say it. If not, I'll leave, lest you roll your eyes at me. Nongzhu pretended to put away the thing in her hand. Wait. Ancestor Nanming let out a loud cry and snatched the item from Nongzhu's hand at lightning speed. Once the thing touched his hand, there was a cold and eerie feeling lingering between his fingers. He couldn't help but put it in front of his eyes to observe. It was dark and crooked. From the cross-section of the fracture, it seemed to have been cut from something. It should be a small part of something. I've never seen this material before. What is it? Nanming ancestor stared at the thing in his hand and asked. You're asking me. Nongzhu pointed at herself and curled her lips. How would I know what it is? If you want to ask, you should ask old Bai. This thing belongs to him. The yin qi on this thing is bone-piercing, and it doesn't dissipate. It doesn't look like it's acquired. It shouldn't be something from the mortal world. Otherwise, there's no way I wouldn't recognize it. Old ancestor Nanming suddenly raised his head and said, judging from its appearance, it should be a small part cut off from some huge item. Nongzhu, tell me honestly, where did you get this thing? No wonder you're a grand master of equipment refining. You can tell the truth at a glance. Nongzhu gave him a thumbs up, then walked to him and put one hand on his shoulder. Nanming ancestor shook his shoulder abruptly and flung his hand away. He glared at him and shouted, what a scandal it is to have your arms around someone else's shoulder. Nongzhu looked him up and down and retorted, you are a guy who wears red underpants all year round. How dare you talk about decency with me? If you want to know where this thing came from, hurry up and give me the year. As he spoke, he placed his arm on ancestor Nanming's shoulder again. This time, ancestor Nanming did not resist. This commotion was witnessed by the two disciples, causing them to look at each other in surprise. The two of them faintly felt that their master must have had a close relationship with Mr. Nongzhu in the past. Otherwise, they wouldn't have acted so intimately. Ninth Netherworld Cave, Nongzhu said softly with a smile. In fact, he didn't have to do this. If he wanted to whisper, he could just send a voice transmission. However, he thought that taking the opportunity to get closer could more or less repair the relationship between the two of them. He especially wanted to let Nanming old ancestors' disciples know that his relationship with their master was not ordinary. In the future, when he came, they must not be impolite. Ah! Nanming ancestor looked at the thing in his hand and shook his head. No wonder, no wonder. Bai Changchun is sitting on a blessed land. Nongzhu's arm had unknowingly wrapped around his shoulder. The two of them were like good brothers. There were busy disciples going in and out of the cave from time to time on Xian Island. Obviously, there were also old people who knew Nongzhu. After seeing this scene, they were all shocked. It turned out that the relationship between their master and Nongzhu was still very close. This is nothing. Let me tell you something even more shocking. Nongzhu touched Nanming ancestor's bearded old face and pulled his head to her mouth. She whispered into his ear again, you guessed it right. The thing in your hand is indeed not something from the mortal world. It was taken from the netherworld gate of the 9th netherworld cave. Do you understand? As she said this, she let go of Nanming ancestor and patted his broad shoulder heavily. Ah! From the underworld. Nanming ancestor exclaimed. But before he could finish, he was interrupted by Nongzhu. What are you shouting for? Are you afraid that others won't know? What old Bai took out is not something ordinary people can compare with. That's right, that's right. Nanming ancestor touched the thing in his hand and nodded. Nongzhu patted his shoulder again and said proudly, how about it? Come with me to Shuntian Island. Old Bai still has this thing. Okay, let me make some preparations. After saying this, Nanming teleported and disappeared, taking the Fong with him. Done. Nongzhu rubbed her hands in satisfaction. At this time, she was in the mood to look around and found that the surrounding environment had not changed. She looked at the two disciples of Nanming ancestor, then stared at the flying dragon and said with a smirk, Little Hong Hong. Just now he called it a little beast, but now he changed it. The flying dragon was also quite intelligent. In order to help her friend, she invited the world's #1 expert, Bai Changchun, to solve the problem for him. Thus, Nongzhu became Nanming ancestor's good friend and often came to Xian Island to play. At that time, Nongzhu was the only person in the cultivation world who could enter and leave Xian Island at will. 60 years ago, a batch of fiery rock vidra had just started laying eggs. The eggs were the size of a fist. They were red and shiny and looked very beautiful. There were only about 100 of them. Nanming ancestor regarded them as a treasure and sent his mount, a flying dragon, to watch over the incubation. Coincidentally, Nongzhu came again. Nanming ancestor spoke out of turn and said that before he subdued fiery rock vidra, he had eaten an egg. The taste was simply unparalleled in the world. When Nongzhu heard this, she immediately became indignant. She pestered Nanming ancestor relentlessly and insisted on having a taste. In the end, old ancestor Nanming was forced into a corner. For the sake of his friend, he endured the pain and gave one to him. After Nongzhu ate it, he exclaimed that it was delicious. However, this one made him addicted to it and he could not stop eating it. Later on, no one knew what method he used, but he actually instigated the flying dragon that was guarding the incubation of the crab eggs to steal it. The man and the dragon ate heartily and enjoyed themselves. In reality, Nongzhu only ate about 7 or 8 of them. The main reason was that the eggs were too big. If she ate too much, she would die. However, the flying dragon liked to eat things of the fire attribute. The fiery rock vidra's egg was just to its liking. Once it ate it, it could not stop. Needless to say, the big fellow's appetite was almost completely devoured by this silly dragon. After that, the man and the dragon were dumbfounded when they realized that there were no crab eggs left. Needless to say, the consequences were obvious. Nanming ancestor flew into a rage and Nongzhu hurriedly left. They had not been here for decades. The flying dragon, who could not escape, was in a miserable state. It was almost skinned alive. This was also the reason why the flying dragon immediately took action when it saw Nongzhu, a fellow who shared blessings with others and was extremely disloyal. At this moment, Nongzhu felt guilty when she saw the remaining 100 or so fiery rock vidra. However, when she thought of the delicious crab eggs, it was simply an endless aftertaste. She could not help but secretly look around, not knowing if it was the time for them to lay eggs. Just as she was about to look around, she suddenly heard Nanming ancestor's earth-shaking roar from outside. Old thief Nongzhu, why are you not showing yourself? Are you thinking of stealing from my Xian Island again? It was followed by the angry roar of the flying dragon. Chapter 452. The two words Nongzhu were famous on Xianxian Island. When Patriarch Nanming roared, the 9 bens and 18 bens gathered below and rumbled, waking everyone up. The busy people at the bottom of the mountain quickly looked around, and their eyes all fell on Nongzhu. Nongzhu had many acquaintances here. After all, she used to hang around here often. Ha! Long time no see. You guys are busy. Nongzhu waved at the crowd with a smile. Just as she turned around, her face darkened, and she quickly ran away. As soon as she came out of the cave, she shouted, "Old Nanming, what are you shouting for? I won't take your scrap metal even if you give it to me." The two stood less than half a meter apart. Their eyes met, and sparks flew. Nongzhu clenched her teeth and stretched out her hand, shouting, "Give me back my things." "When did I take your things?" Ancestor Nanming spat. Nongzhu wiped the saliva off her face and said, "Old Bai asked me to bring them." "You took them just now." "Bai Changchun gave it to me." "You're just a messenger." "Since when did it become yours?" Nanming Grand Elder wiped the saliva off his face as well. He turned around and shouted at the flying dragon, "Let's go." The flying dragon shot up into the sky. Ancestor Nanming caught up with it and landed firmly on the dragon's back. The flying dragon quickly passed through the fog. Nongzhu leaped into the air and caught up to him. She stood side by side with Nanming Ancestor without hesitation. Both of them let out a cold snort at the same time. The flying dragon was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a black dot in the distant sky. Crossing the vast demon ghost region, Nongzhu and Ancestor Nanming rode on the flying dragon and arrived at the sky above Shantian Island. Bai Changchun's voice rang in the sky, "Nanming, my brother, you have graced my Shantian Island with your presence." As he spoke, Bai Changchun's thin and elegant figure appeared outside the big house. An expert came to greet them personally. 2 figures flashed down. Ancestor Nanming cupped his hands and bowed, "I dare not." His temper could be considered bad in the cultivation world, but when he saw Bai Changchun, he still performed the basic etiquette properly. He did not dare to be presumptuous in front of the world's #1 expert. Nongzhu looked at the direction of the plantation suspiciously and asked, "Old Bai, what happened to Ze?" When he was still in the air, he saw Ze baring her fangs and brandishing her claws, jumping like a madman. Bai Changchun ignored him and waved at Nanming Ancestor, "Please come in." Grandmaster Nanming expressed his gratitude. He raised his head and shouted at the flying dragon, "Find a place and stay obediently. Don't disturb the peace of Obedient Island." Then, he entered the house with Bai Changchun. The dragon in the sky let out a low roar, turned around, and obediently landed in a corner of the Obedient Island. Nongzhu, on the other hand, teleported to the abandoned plantation. She saw that Ze had been doing strange things. She did not even notice that he was standing beside her for a long time. She was tormented until she was drenched in sweat. Nongzhu was startled and asked, "Ze, what are you doing?" Ze suddenly stopped. When she turned around and saw it was her master, she immediately burst into tears. She threw herself into Nongzhu's arms and cried her heart out. Nongzhu's heart suddenly tightened. He patted his daughter's shoulder and comforted her, "Ze, what's wrong? Did someone bully you?" You Qiancho, he." Ze choked with sobs. Nongzhu's eyes widened and he shouted angrily, "You Qiancho, you son of a b*tch, how dare you bully Ze? Get out of here." This shout was no less than a sudden clap of thunder. It immediately provoked Bai Changchun's sonorous rebuke, "Nongzhu, what do you want?" Although his voice was not as loud as Nongju's, the sonorous demon-subduing power hit Nongju without missing a single word, shaking people's hearts. Ancestor Nanming, who was sitting cross-legged with Bai Changchun in the house, suddenly felt happy in his heart. He casually said, "This guy is not a good guy." As soon as he finished his words, even he found that he was a little suspicious of fanning the flames. He immediately changed his words, "Who is Yu Qianqiu?" "It is my disciple's name," Bai Changchun said in a tone that hid some complacency. Ancestor Nanming made a long, "oh" sound, but he remembered this name in his heart. A disciple who could make Bai Changchun proud must be an extraordinary person. He nodded and said, "Brother Bai's disciple must be a talent. I would like to see it." "Ha! Brother Nanming, you are a little late. My disciple has already left a day earlier," Bai Changchun said with a smile. Ziyi, who was at the plantation, stopped crying when she heard Bai Changchun's anger. She pulled Nongju, whose face was pale, and said, "Master, he did not bully me. Did he say that I am stupid?" Nongju said angrily, "How can my disciple be stupid? No matter how stupid she is still smarter than him." Her expression suddenly became distorted. She turned her head and asked, "He only said that you are stupid, and you cried like this?" Ziyi hung her head and said sadly, "Senior Bai taught us the same incantation. My speed of understanding is indeed not as fast as his, so I begged him to teach me. In the end, not long after teaching, he said that he could not stand me. He said that I was too stupid to be carved, so he left me alone and left the demon region." Nongju was stunned when she heard this. She was happy and worried at the same time. She was happy because Bai Changchun was really generous and really taught her daughter the incantation. She was worried because she felt that her daughter was a little dependent on Yu Qianqiu. This was a bad omen. The cultivation method created by Bai Changchun could be said to be unprecedented in this world. Ziyi was dumbfounded when she saw it. She had no idea how to learn it. Therefore, Ziyi, who almost broke down, pestered Yu Qianqiu. As a result, Yu Qianqiu almost broke down because of Ziyi. He found that this woman was simply a donkey who could not be taught no matter what. However, Ziyi kept pestering him, and he could not get rid of her. Originally, he wanted to wait for Elder Nanming to come and see the scene of refining the spiritual treasure. Later, he heard from Bai Changchun that refining the spiritual treasure would take a month to prepare. Yu Qianqiu could not wait any longer. Finally, when Ziyi pestered him again, he scolded Ziyi. Then, he brazenly said goodbye to Bai Changchun. Every move of the two was under Bai Changchun's control. Bai Changchun deeply understood his disciple's pain. He was an extremely talented person. If he had to teach Ziyi like this, he would also be angry. Therefore, he agreed to Yu Qianqiu's departure. At the same time, he gave a few words to Yu Qianqiu. If you really encounter a soul formation cultivator who deliberately makes things difficult for you, try your best to resolve it. If you really can't resolve it, you might as well tell me your master's name. I want to see who dares to touch you. His words were full of killing intent. Bai Changchun made 3 communication jade pendants on the spot and gave them to Yu Qianqiu. These things could not really send messages. They only hid a strand of Bai Changchun's divine sense in each of them. In other words, if something really happened to Yu Qianqiu, once he crushed the jade pendant, Bai Changchun would immediately know where his disciple was in trouble. Perhaps because the distance was too far, Bai Changchun would not be able to arrive in time with his cultivation. However, the place where Yu Qianqiu was in trouble would be earth-shattering. Yu Qianqiu was overjoyed as he held the jade pendant and left. Maldiv *Ker, now it was clear that Yu Qianqiu was letting him do whatever he wanted. However, although he was happy, he still knew one thing. These 3 jade pendants could not be used unless it was absolutely necessary. If he took them out and used them for such a trivial matter, it would be an insult to his ability. Before leaving the demon ghost region, Yu Qianqiu chatted with Yu Ji again and asked her to cultivate in peace. After leaving the demon ghost region, he found a hidden place and disappeared. He had not returned to Utopia for a long time. The moment Yu Qianqiu appeared, he stood beside Bai Suzhen. Bai Suzhen was not surprised. She knew that he was the only one who could suddenly appear beside her in Utopia. She raised her head and smiled sweetly at him. She put down the green destiny sword in her hand and stood up to ask softly, "You're here?" Yu Qianqiu nodded. He looked at that calm and gentle face and was unwilling to shift his gaze away for a long time. The moment he saw her, he felt his entire body and mind completely relax. At this moment, he was his true self. It was like this every time. He was influenced by her and became like her, without any desires. She did not have any requests for him, nor did she have any ties to him. She would not even throw a tantrum with him. There was only understanding and support without any reservations. Everything was done in silence, and she would never have any regrets. "I really want to keep this sword, but I know you won't be happy. My heart hurts to have you suffer like this. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have given this sword to you." Yu Qianqiu looked at the green destiny sword on the bed and shook his head with a bitter smile. "Since you know I won't be happy, then don't mention it again," Bai Suzhen said softly. She looked at him from head to toe and frowned. "Why are there so many mud on your body?" "Ha! I've been practicing a martial art recently. It's all because of the hard work." Yu Qianqiu recalled the process of practicing the animal fencing and had a helpless expression. It seemed like he had not felt any effects until now. "Change into another one. Otherwise, your parents and Ping will be worried." As Bai Suzhen spoke, she had already leaned over and reached out to help him remove his outer clothes. On the other hand, Yu Qianqiu took out a new set of clothes from his storage bag. After removing the dirty clothes, Bai Suzhen took the clothes from his hands and helped him change. After that, both of them had a knowing smile on their faces. Yu Qianqiu opened his arms and said, "Let me hug you." Bai Suzhen looked at him and tilted her head. She raised her hand and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She smiled faintly and leaned into his embrace. Yu Qianqiu gently pulled her into his embrace and buried his head in her hair. He sniffed the faint fragrance and murmured, "I want to jump out of China's cultivation world and travel around." Bai Suzhen felt his heartbeat and had a faint sense of satisfaction on her face. She asked softly, "Do you need me to do anything?" "As long as I can see you every time I come back, I will have endless motivation outside. This is more important than anything you do." Yu Qianqiu turned his head and said with a little enchantment. Bai Suzhen raised her head and said, "I've already helped your parents consume the 7 orifices exquisite pill. It seems to be quite effective. Go and take a look." "Got it." Yu Qianqiu grunted and suddenly asked softly, "You seem to have delegated all the power of Ethereal Palace to Ping. Yes. Is there a problem?" Bai Suzhen asked. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and did not say anything. Chapter 453. The two of them walked out of Ethereal Palace side by side. Their temperaments reflected each other, and the palace maids they encountered bowed to them. To them, their leader's status in Utopia was needless to say. As for Sister Bai, who lived in seclusion, be it in terms of temperament or appearance, she was unique in Utopia. Her clothes were as white as snow all year round, and she was as elegant as a snow lotus on an iceberg. Although Sister Bai didn't interfere with anything in Ethereal Palace or Utopia, she controlled the lifeline of the entire Utopia. Everyone's primordial spirits were in her hands. Even Chief Instructor Guan, who controlled the entire Utopia military, would come to greet her from time to time. That respectful attitude was something he didn't have even when he met the current person in charge of Ethereal Palace, Chu Ping. The There was also Chief Chin, who was usually sparse. When he saw the gentle Sister Bai, he was also very respectful. Once Sister Bai instructed him to do something, he would definitely not hesitate and would not dare to give her any discount. As such, even though Big Sister Bai was tolerant, the people in Utopia who saw her were all filled with respect and fear. The two of them stood in front of the cliff outside Ethereal Palace for a while and chatted for a while before Bai Suzhen left quietly. Not long after, a stream of light streaked over. Chu Ping put away her flying sword in surprise and landed. She punched Yu Qianzhou's chest and said coquettishly, "Why did you only come back once after so long?" Now, on Chu Pinger's face, the haze of the past could no longer be seen. Instead, it was shrouded in bright and vibrant colors, and the way she spoke was more confident. A faint aura of a superior had begun to appear, and she had the image of a strong woman. Needless to say, she was now the master of hundreds of people in Ethereal Palace. Compared to Ang Kuang-tsung's disciple who could be ordered around, her situation was worlds apart. Now that the entire Utopia knew that she was Yu Qianzhou's woman, no one dared to criticize her. She was the only one who could criticize others. She was very busy every day. Yu Qianzhou grabbed her fist and pulled it into his embrace. He said with a naughty smile, "Did you miss me? TSK TSK. Your body has become even more voluptuous." Annoying. Chu Pinger shyly raised her other fist and punched him twice, causing Yu Qianzhou to laugh weirdly and grope her all over. Chu Pinger's face was flushed red. She pushed him away weakly and said, "There's something I need to tell you. Your parents aren't used to living in the Misty Palace, so they moved to Dongguosu's place. I'll accompany you to see them now. There's no need to rush. Let me examine you first." Yu Qianzhou lifted her up forcefully, causing a burst of exclamations. Then, the two of them disappeared. When they reappeared, they were already at the lakeside where the two of them first made love. Then, their clothes fluttered in the wind and water splashed everywhere. What a pair of mandarin ducks playing in the water. Now, Dongguosu also had hundreds of people under him. Planting and breeding went hand in hand, solving the logistics and food supply of the entire Utopia. This piece of land was flourishing. When Chu Pinger and Yu Qianzhou arrived, they immediately found Yu Chonggui and his wife. The two of them were in much better spirits than when they were in the Misty Palace. After careful observation, Yu Qianzhou realized that ordinary mortals would look lethargic when they were over 50 years old. It was a sign that their bodies were failing. Now that his parents' faces were completely devoid of lethargy, it was clear that the elixir had taken effect. This made Yu Qianzhou feel gratified. It should not be a problem for his parents to live for another 50 years. When they met, the family naturally had endless things to talk about. Yu Qianzhou decided to accompany his parents for the entire day. Chu Pinger temporarily put down her miscellaneous items and acted like a good daughter-in-law. Xue Ernyang was naturally happy, but she was filled with complaints that her daughter-in-law's stomach was not big. Chu Pinger was extremely shy. From time to time, she would secretly glare at Yu Qianzhou, but the latter pretended not to see her. The next day, Yu Qianzhou ordered someone to bring him a large pile of spiritual herbs in the Utopia military camp. Then, he personally refined a large pile of elixirs. He opened his hands, and green flames appeared on his palms. At the same time, he cultivated. Guan Yu only needed to be in charge of throwing in the spiritual herbs. His skilled alchemy skills were like child's play, shocking Guan Yu once again. He was indeed much better than the arrogant Chen Feng. When the two of them placed the elixirs into bottles, Guan Yu asked, "What elixirs are you refining?" Aura sealing elixir. Consuming one can prevent others from seeing through one's cultivation level for 10 days. In the past, I didn't have all the ingredients, but now that I have everything, I naturally have to refine more in one go. Although this thing isn't very effective, it's useful, Yu Qianzhou said as he filled the bottles. Guan Yu picked up a small yellow elixir and looked at it. He did not expect such a magical elixir to exist. He asked curiously, "Your body's talent is abnormal. Others can't see through your cultivation level. Who are you giving so many elixirs to?" He guessed that Yu Qianzhou was going to bring another batch of people out. Yu Qianzhou put away the large pile of bottles in front of the two of them. He leaned back in his chair and looked at the pile of yellow elixirs left on the table. He smiled and said, "The Chinese cultivation world is too tense these days. It makes people feel like they don't know where to start. I'm going to go to other countries." Guan Yu was silent for a while and said, "How many people do you need this time?" Yu Qianzhou shook his head and said, "For the time being, there is no need to use a large number of special forces. You just need to focus on training them. When I have a clear understanding of the situation, I will naturally use them. By the way, help me call Hong Qi and the other two over. Their cultivation has already reached the early stage of the tribulation passing stage. It's time for them to go out and gain experience." Guan Yu nodded and went out. Not long after, he brought back 3 guys in ragged clothes covered in blood. When the 3 saw Yu Qianzhou, they hurriedly bowed. After carefully looking at the 3 people, Yu Qianzhou nodded in satisfaction. The 3 guys had obviously just come down from the actual combat training. From their sorry appearance, it seemed like they had been tossed around quite a bit. The killing intent that had not yet dispersed from the 3 of them was obvious. Even the young boy, Hong Qi, had a murderous look on his face. He looked like a hungry wolf that had just been released from its cage. "I'll give you a quarter of an hour. Wash up and change your clothes before coming to see me." Yu Qianzhou lightly waved his hand and said. The 3 of them accepted the order and quickly left. Not even a quarter of an hour later, the 3 of them rushed back. After going through training, their behavior was really different. Yu Qianzhou pointed at the pile of elixirs on the table and said, "These are breath-concealing elixirs. After taking one, no one will be able to tell that you are a cultivator for 10 days. Each of you fill up 10 bottles and bring them with you. They will be useful when you go out." "He wants to bring us out." The 3 of them were stunned. They looked at each other and did not dare to say anything. They quickly filled the bottles according to Yu Qianzhou's instructions. Each bottle could contain about 100 elixirs. 10 bottles would be more than 1,000 elixirs. As Yu Qianzhou looked at them, he said, "When you go out this time, Hong Qi and Gu Qingyun will be traveling as itinerant cultivators in China's cultivation world. Remember to change your names so that no one can recognize you. I'll give each of you 30 Special Forces members. Remember to keep a low profile. Otherwise, with your strength, you won't be able to fight those large sections." After the 3 of them packed the elixirs, Hong Qi asked excitedly, "Master, what do we need to do when we go out?" Yu Qianzhou rolled his eyes at him and pretended to be angry. "Of course, I'm not asking you to go sightseeing. You have a mission this time. I'll give you and Gu Qingyun a year. Each of you has to bring back 100 million superior-grade spirit stones. I don't care if you steal or snatch it. I don't know when I'll be back. Grandpa and Grandma, please take care. I still have something to do. I'll bid farewell now." Hong Qi said as he knelt down and kowtowed. "Good, good, good." The old couple helped him up emotionally. Hong Qi stepped back and bowed. Then, he bounced up and flew away. The old couple stared at him for a long time. They could never reach such a cultivation level in their entire lives. Now that they saw it on their grandson, how could they not be excited? More than 10 people came from all around the farmland. They surrounded the old couple and asked, "This is your grandson. This is the direct disciple of the leader." The old couple's faces were full of pride, but they still spoke modestly. After dealing with the people, the old couple immediately decided to visit Yu Changgue and his wife to see if they needed any help. Chapter 454. In the backyard of the pillar of the State General's estate, Yu Qianqiu reclined on a wooden armchair, munching on snacks and sipping tea. After waiting for some time, Shi Xiaotian excitedly returned with a few letters and placed them on the table. Yu Qianqiu was going to the Western military camp, so he wanted to deliver a letter to Shi Xiaotian's family. In fact, the Shi family had never stopped sending letters to the Western military camp. However, they didn't dare to write anything too profound. After all, the supervisory department of a country wasn't just a nobody, especially when it came to a general like Shi Wenguang who had a powerful army. Yu Qianqiu finished the last melon seed in his mouth, then clapped his hands and took out a jade archive. He placed it on the table and said, "The things inside are beneficial to you. I'll be taking my leave first." He then stood up and kept the letters on the table. Shi Xiaotian smiled bitterly and said, "Boss, if you have nothing to do, come often." Unfortunately, his boss was nowhere to be seen. In the Western military camp, the army was training hard. Their shouts shook the heavens as they prepared for war. Sitting in the middle of the camp was a large tent. Loud laughter could be heard, and the atmosphere was very lively. Shi Wenguang sat behind his desk, toasting with the 4 sword-bearing cultivators who sat on either side of him. The topic of their conversation was none other than Yu Qianqiu. Several guards in the tent were also listening attentively. They were none other than the people Yu Qianqiu had sent to protect Shi Wenguang. As they were listening, they suddenly realized that someone else had appeared beside them. They were shocked and were about to make a move, but they saw that it was Yu Qianqiu. Just as they were about to greet him, Yu Qianqiu waved his hand, signaling for them to be quiet. He then crossed his arms and continued listening to the conversation outside. Outside the tent, Shi Wenguang held a cup in his left hand and made an inviting gesture with his right. He smiled and said, "Immortal Li, Immortal Zhao, Immortal Qiu, and Immortal Wu. I am very grateful that the 4 of you can come and talk about interesting things in the cultivation world with me. Come. Let's have another toast, Immortal Masters." "General, you're too polite." Immortal Masterly wiped his mouth and asked with a smile, "Why is the general so interested in Yu Qianqiu? Every time we come, the general always asks about Yu Qianqiu. Could it be that the general has some relationship with Yu Qianqiu?" Immortal Masterly must be joking. "Although I have a large army under my command, I'm just an ordinary man. How could I have any relationship with Yu Qianqiu? I'm afraid that even if I wanted to climb up the social ladder, he wouldn't be interested in an ordinary man like me." Shi Wenguang laughed heartily. "General, there's no need to belittle yourself. You're a high-ranking official in the secular world. How can you be compared to the cultivation world? Not to mention the fact that Yu Qianqiu is a general. Even if we wanted to curry favor with him, I'm afraid he wouldn't even look us in the eye." Immortal Master Wu shook his head and sighed. Shi Wenguang waved his hand and said, "Immortal Master Wu must be joking. You 4 immortal masters are experts who can fly in the sky and travel through the earth. Anyone would look favorably upon you. If I were to guess, you immortal masters are just unwilling to get involved in the struggles of the cultivation world. Brother Wu, you must have drunk too much. That Yu Qianqiu is just a scum who was expelled from the sect twice. Why should we let him look us in the eye?" Immortal Master Zhao's expression was a little unhappy. The 4 of them relied on their status in the cultivation world to interact with the Pillar of State General and often came here to eat and drink for free. How could they say such demeaning words? Wouldn't that be a great loss of face? The guards in the tent all looked at Yu Qianqiu. They only saw a faint smile on Yu Qianqiu's face. He remained unmoved and closed his eyes to listen. No one knew what he was thinking. Shi Wenguang's expression stiffened. He naturally knew that the guards in the tent were sent by Yu Qianqiu. He really didn't know how they would react after hearing this. After waiting for a while, Shi Wenguang raised his cup and smiled. "Immortal masters, please don't stop. Let's drink." After they drank, Immortal Master Qiu asked the others, "Have you heard? It said that Yu Qianzhou led 600 experts and fought with the Deluo sect in Wanghai town. I wonder if it's true." The guards in the tent looked at the person in question in surprise. A cold smile appeared on Yu Qianzhou's face. He thought to himself, "And here I thought it was some bullshit immortal master. If they can't even figure out this kind of thing, then it goes without saying that they're all useless people. That madman is capable of anything." Immortal Master Li shook his head. Shi Wenguang immediately became spirited. He straightened his back and asked, "Immortal Masters, can you tell me in detail what happened?" Immortal Master Wu smiled bitterly and said, "I have heard of this matter. Yu Qianzhou led more than 600 people and fought with the Deluo sect's 1,000 people in front of all the sections. It was an intense battle to the death. What was the result?" Everyone asked in unison. "The result is unbelievable." Immortal Master Wu shook his head. The Deluo sect, ranked second among the righteous sects, suffered a crushing defeat. Only a few dozen of their 1,000 people were left. On the other hand, Yu Qianzhou only lost 200 people. The most shocking thing was that Yu Qianzhou was able to fight against 2 late-stage tribulation transcendence experts by himself. In the end, it was the 2 late-stage tribulation transcendence experts who suffered a loss. Hiss. Everyone gasped. They didn't care about the 1,000 people who died. What they cared about the most was the fact that Yu Qianzhou defeated 2 late-stage tribulation transcendence experts by himself. For them, late-stage tribulation transcendence experts were the pinnacle of experts. Immortal Master Zhao, who previously ridiculed Yu Qianzhou, twitched and asked, "Brother Wu, is this news fake?" "It can't be fake. I heard it personally from a disciple of the Deluo sect. He wouldn't fabricate a scandal about our sect." Immortal Master Wu said with a breath that reeked of alcohol. The scene immediately became silent. Shi Wenguang's eyes flickered with excitement. Yu Qianzhou didn't lie to him. Since he had the ability to fight against the Deluo sect, it was only a matter of time before something big happened. He immediately raised his cup and said, "Immortal Masters, please." Then he drank the cup to show his respect. Immortal Master Zhao clearly felt that he had lost face. After putting down his cup, he snorted and said, "I think this news is probably fake. Think about it. I heard that Yu Qianzhou is only at the nascent soul stage. How could he defeat 2 late-stage tribulation transcendence experts from the Deluo sect by himself?" Everyone looked at each other. After all, they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, so it was hard to say. Even if they said it was fake, they had heard many people talking about it. If they said it was true, it was indeed unimaginable. What if it's true? Someone in the tent suddenly laughed. Shi Wenguang was slightly surprised. This person's voice was too familiar. Sure enough, Yu Qianzhou lifted the curtain and slowly walked out. He secretly gave Shi Wenguang, who was about to speak, a look to indicate that he should not speak. He stood beside Shi Wenguang and cupped his hands towards the people below. "I am a cousin of the great general. I heard immortal masters talking about it and couldn't help but come out to join in the fun. I hope immortal masters won't mind." As he spoke, he looked at the people around him. They were only at the foundation establishment stage, yet they dared to come to his territory and pretend to be experts. They simply didn't know what was good for them. The 4 people looked at Shi Wenguang in confusion. The latter nodded and said with a smile, "Immortal masters, please don't be suspicious. He is indeed my cousin." Hearing this, the people around him relaxed. What? The great general's cousin is also interested in the matters of the cultivation world. Immortal Master Zhao shook his head and said, "Then let me test you. Do you know how many sects there are in the cultivation world? How many righteous sects and how many demonic sects? There should be at least a few hundred." Yu Qianqiu said after thinking for a moment. Chapter 455. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said nonchalantly, "It's nothing much, we just played together for a while." He really did lead that group of loose cultivators to have fun for a while, so he wasn't lying. The four were speechless. Immortal Master Wu stood up and cupped his hands. "Hongming is a senior expert among us loose cultivators. Since young brother can play with him, you must not be a nobody. May I know young brother's great name?" Shi Wenguang couldn't help but sigh as he held his wine cup. He really wanted to tell them to stop asking, but he held back after some thought. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Shi Wenguang and walked away with his hands behind his back. He slowly walked to the space between the two horizontal tables and looked outside the tent. He said calmly, word by word, "I don't have any great name. I am merely Yu Qianqiu, the scum that Immortal Master Zhao just mentioned, who was expelled from the sect twice." Crash! The wine cup that Immortal Master Zhao had just picked up fell on the table and rolled to the ground. He didn't notice the wine spilling all over his body as he stared with wide eyes at the young man standing proudly in front of him with his hands behind his back. Silence. It was very quiet inside the tent, but the sounds of fighting and training could be heard very clearly outside. This wasn't the first time they had come to the pillar of the State General's tent, but this was the first time they could hear the sounds outside so clearly. However, they turned a deaf ear to them. Gulp, gulp. It was the sound of Shi Wenguang drinking wine. He finally knew how powerful Yu Qianqiu was in the cultivation world. He had only heard of it before, but now, these four usually arrogant immortal masters. Sigh. Yu Qianqiu was right. They really couldn't show themselves in public. They didn't even know if the person was real or fake, but they were already scared to this extent. The four slowly stood up. The expressions on their faces were truly ever-changing. Yu Qianqiu looked around and said indifferently, "What? Does the four immortal masters think there's a problem?" Immortal Master Zhao swallowed with difficulty and laughed awkwardly. "Ha! Little brother, are you joking? You are just an ordinary man, while Yu Qianqiu is an expert in the cultivation world. How can you two be lumped together?" His laughter sounded worse than crying, as if someone was strangling him. Yu Qianqiu is an expert in the cultivation world. Yu Qianqiu turned his head to stare at him and asked, "Immortal Master Zhao, isn't that wrong? I just heard you say that Yu Qianqiu is just a scum who was expelled from the sect twice. How did he become an expert now? Could it be that my hearing is bad? Did I hear wrongly?" These words struck at the heart. Immortal Master Zhao laughed and said, "Little brother really likes to joke. Great General, your cousin likes to joke around." The last sentence was directed at Shi Wenguang, but he saw that Shi Wenguang was engrossed in drinking, and his attitude was unclear. This time, the four of them clearly felt that something was wrong. Every time they came, this great general was always respectful to them. How could such a situation occur? The heavy atmosphere caused by not knowing the truth made it hard for the four of them to breathe. A trace of ruthlessness flashed across Immortal Master Li's face, and he suddenly shouted, "This wine is boring, I don't want to drink anymore. Great General, I'll take my leave." He cupped his hands and was about to leave, but just as he took a few steps away from the table, he heard someone behind him say indifferently, "You have guts. You dare to behave atrociously in front of me. If you have the guts, try walking out of this tent." The person who spoke was naturally Yu Qianqiu. "I can't walk anymore. I don't dare to walk anymore." Immortal Master Li's body was rooted to the ground, and he didn't even have the courage to turn around. Then he heard Yu Qianqiu say indifferently, "If you have the ability to walk out of this tent, I will spare your life." There is no joking in the army. You can try. His voice was very soft, but it was as if his words could decide their life and death, filled with unquestionable confidence. The four of them were scared witless. Even if a mortal pretended to be strong, it was impossible for him to act like this. Perhaps if they really met that legendary person. As soon as Yu Qianqiu finished speaking, the curtains of the inner tent moved, and 6 figures flashed out, standing in 4 different directions. 2 of them were guarding the entrance of the tent. There were a total of 10 people sent to protect Shi Wenguang. 2 were assigned to protect Shirin Tian, and the other 2 were taking turns to take the restriction-breaking pill to increase their cultivation. These 6 guards, the 4 immortal masters had naturally seen them before, and thought that they were experts from the army. Now that they saw the commotion, they were dumbfounded. These 6 people were clearly cultivators, and based on their speed, their cultivation was much higher than theirs. The funny thing was, they actually dared to act like they were experts in front of the Pillar of States General for a long time. They didn't even know how much face they had lost. But then again, the 6 people's cultivation was much higher than theirs, and they really couldn't see through their cultivation. Facing a dead end, Immortal Masterly turned around, and the 4 of them stared at Shi Wenguang. Immortal Master Wu's face was ashen as he said, "Since the Grand General has so many experts protecting him, why waste time dealing with the 4 of us? Could it be that the army is so lonely and bored that you want to make fun of us? Isn't the Grand General a bit too much?" Shi Wenguang held his wine cup and paused for a moment, then shook his head with a bitter smile. He didn't know how to explain, not to mention that the right to decide was not in his hands. Immortal Master Wu turned around and gritted his teeth. "I don't care who you are, and I don't care if you are Yu Qianqiu. The 4 of us know that we can't escape from your palm, so what do you want to do with us? I'll say it again, as long as you can get out of this tent, I will spare his life." Yu Qianqiu glanced at him, then turned to look at Shi Wenguang and sneered, "The Grand General is so carefree, but aren't you being too concerned about some things?" The 4 immortal masters' faces were ashen, none of them had the guts to rush out. "Mister, please don't misunderstand." Shi Wenguang quickly stood up and cupped his hands in apology. "It's not that I want to pry into Mister's privacy, but the army has been on standby for a long period of time. The longer we wait, the more tired our morale will be. Asking for information about Mister is because I want to be prepared. I can't wait any longer, after all, time waits for no man. I'm worried that when the day comes, I won't be able to command the army." Yu Qianqiu frowned. Shi Wenguang's words were indeed a problem. With Shirin Tian's experience and ability, he wouldn't be able to command the entire army. The 4 immortal masters also heard some clues and were aghast. This Yu Qianqiu's ambition was not small, he actually wanted to rebel. Wouldn't that mean that sooner or later, he would have to fight with the supporting immortal island for the world, the matters of the cultivation world? The Grand General doesn't need to worry about it in the future. Just focus on your own matters. Yu Qianqiu said expressionlessly. "Mister is right." Shi Wenguang's voice was heavy. Because of this moment of carelessness, his entire family fell into the enemy's hands. Even if they wanted to resist, they didn't have the strength to do so. As for the problem that the Grand General is worried about, to me, it's not a problem at all. Yu Qianqiu looked at him and smiled. "If I extend your lifespan for another 10 years, I'm sure the Grand General won't have any misgivings, right?" "Mister, you mean?" Shi Wenguang was pleasantly surprised, he even suspected that he had heard wrongly. Yu Qianqiu didn't rush to reply. Instead, he turned to the 4 so-called immortal masters and asked, "Do any of you know about the 7 orifices exquisite pill?" The 4 people looked at each other, thinking about the name of the pill in their minds. Suddenly, Immortal Master Zhao revealed a look of realization. With the thought of redeeming himself, he said, "Mister, I remember now. I've heard people say that the 7 orifices exquisite pill is a miraculous pill. It is said that a mortal can extend their lifespan by 50 years, and a cultivator can extend their lifespan by 150 years. Mister, I wonder if I'm right. N. I didn't expect you to have some knowledge. Yu Qianqiu smiled and nodded. Mister is flattering me. Immortal Master Zhao smiled from ear to ear, his face full of flattery. However, after hearing what Yu Qianqiu said, he couldn't smile anymore. If that's the case, then I'll give you a quick death. Yu Qianqiu said indifferently, then made a kill without mercy gesture to the 6 guards. The guards were shocked, but they didn't even have the chance to scream before their heads were separated from their bodies. Their blood spurted high into the air, dyeing the ground red as they fell to the ground with a crash. Yu Qianqiu said indifferently, in the future, if you see such swindlers again, for the sake of the great general's safety, kill without mercy. Yes. The 6 people bowed and accepted the order. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, pack up, all of you can leave for the time being. Without another word, the 6 people quickly carried the beheaded corpse out. They knew that their leader wanted to speak privately, so they closed the tent curtain, leaving only the 2 of them in the tent. Shi Wenguang was so shocked that he couldn't speak. He didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to be so cruel and merciless, taking people's lives so easily. He was used to seeing life and death, so he wasn't afraid of seeing dead people. It was the first time he saw the skills of his 6 guards, so he was shocked. He didn't even see what was going on before the heads of the 4 flying immortals were removed. Thinking about how there were always 6 powerful people around him who didn't share the same thoughts as him, he felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. To be honest, he was considered a famous general, so he didn't want to be controlled by others for a long time. He did have some disloyalty, and hoped to hook up with some experts in the cultivation world through the immortals. When the time was right, he wanted to get rid of the guards that Yu Qianqiu had sent to protect him and his family. But now, he was really shocked by the reality in front of him. The other party didn't say anything and killed the people that he was going to use as a middleman. At the same time, he said it was for the sake of the great general's safety, and it completely cut off his little thoughts. How ruthless. This was something that both sides were aware of, so Yu Qianqiu wouldn't point it out. Since you've cut off your thoughts, you should be more obedient and stop thinking about unrelated things. He smiled faintly and took out a spirit pill. The inside of the tent was immediately filled with rippling blood-colored light, and it was abnormally mysterious and blurry. Shi Wenguang stared in surprise at the magical pill that was emitting a strange light. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, "This is the 7 orifices exquisite pill that can extend a mortal's life by 50 years. Chapter 456. Although his words were pleasant, Shi Wenguang looked at the panacea before him in a daze. There was also a hint of desolation in his eyes. He was unwilling to take it for a long time. He was not excited that Yu Qianqiu was going to give him a rare panacea. Instead, he was thinking that Yu Qianqiu was going to give him a poison to control him. He had seen many similar things in his decades in the army. Yu Qianqiu saw through him and sneered. "General, you're underestimating me too much. Do you really think that you, the pillar of the kingdom, are indispensable? That I, Yu Qianqiu, can't do without you? If it wasn't for Shi Shaotian, why would I waste so much effort on your Shi family? I could have just knocked supporting Immortal Island off its pedestal. Would I be afraid that the Li dynasty wouldn't submit to me at that time? Why would I do all this?" Shi Wenguang was stunned by his words, but he suddenly became clear-headed. Thinking about it, if Shi Wenguang could push supporting Immortal Island off its position as the #1 sect, he would have the strength to lead the cultivation world. Why would he need to ask Shi Wenguang for help? It would be a simple matter for him to support someone to take over. However, there's no need to hesitate. This panacea is indeed a genuine exquisite pill of 7 orifices. If someone begs me to give it to them, I won't give it to them. A hint of impatience appeared on Yu Qianqiu's face. He said bluntly, "General, if you have anything to say, why don't you just say it? Let's not beat around the bush today." Shi Wenguang gritted his teeth and grabbed the panacea in his hand. He had made it clear that whether it was a poison or a panacea, he would eat it. "Forgive me for being blunt, but your actions just now clearly show that you want to firmly control my Shi family. You don't want to give us any chance to escape your control. Am I not supposed to be suspicious of you?" He raised the pill in his hand as he spoke. Yu Qianqiu paused for a moment before bursting into laughter. Shaking his head, he said, "I admit that I want to control your Shi family, but it's only temporary. It's not what you think it is. Once I'm done with what I want to do, you'll find that your Shi family's little sacrifice will bring you incalculable benefits." Oh! Shi Wenguang also regained the heroic spirit of a great general. He asked, "Mister, please speak frankly. It will also help to dispel the doubts in my heart and make me feel at ease." "All right. That way, you can be mentally prepared. Let me see how bold you are, great General Shi." With a wave of his hand, Yu Qianqiu swept all the documents, papers, pens, tokens, and the like onto the floor. Then, he pulled out a box from thin air and placed it on the table. He opened the box, revealing a box full of clean jade archives. Yu Qianqiu pointed at the contents of the box, hinting for him to take a look. "Mister, you're flattering me. How could I dare to conquer the entire world? I can't take on this responsibility. General, you've spent half your life on the battlefield. You've earned your reputation on the back of a horse. Everyone in the Xia Empire knows about you." Yu Qianqiu patiently guided him. "If you can make it bigger, let the entire world know about you. At that time, the general will be the world's #1 general. His name will be recorded in the annals of history, and he will be a role model for future generations. I'm afraid no one in the future generations will be able to surpass this glory." Shi Wenguang's lips tightened. His breathing gradually became heavier. His cheeks were slightly red. Clearly, his emotions were fluctuating and he was forcefully suppressing them. Yu Qianqiu smiled without saying a word. From his previous life, he knew that a general who disliked war and achievements would never become a famous general. Between countries, war was an eternal topic that could stand the test. War was also a drama that would never end. Peace was always an intermission. Everything else was bullshit. A powerful country would always be actively preparing for a war that could happen at any time. War belonged to generals who showed off their abilities. Those generals were also the most dazzling records in the annals of history. Yu Qianqiu believed that General Shi would be very interested. The world is big. There are countless brave generals who are good at war. Moreover, every country is guarded by people from the cultivation world. How could Shi Wenguang dare to conquer the world? Shi Wenguang swallowed with difficulty and rejected implicitly. He had long heard that Yu Qianqiu was a famous madman in the cultivation world. He dared to do anything. How could he be muddle-headed and agree to go against the entire world? Wouldn't that be nonsense? War was not child's play. If I can conquer the entire cultivation world and solve the worries of the general, do you dare? Yu Qianqiu smiled faintly. This guy had obviously taken out the most tempting thing and was constantly seducing her. Shi Wenguang smiled bitterly. "Sir, why are you so sure that I have the ability to conquer the entire world?" "Because an unprecedented great man once wrote a poem to praise you. That's why I'm full of confidence in you," Yu Qianqiu said solemnly. Shi Wenguang was stunned. He asked, "Which great man wrote a poem to praise me? Why don't I know?" "What poem?" "That great man can only be admired in your heart. Don't talk about him. As for that poem, I can read it to you." Yu Qianqiu pressed his hand on the table and lightly tapped the rhythm. He recited, "The mountains are high and the roads are deep. The great army gallops unhindered. Only I, General Shi, dare to attack." "General Shi, I'm not joking with you." Yu Qianqiu walked in front of him and said indifferently, "I can do my best to help you conquer the world, but the price your Shi clan has to pay is to ensure my Yu clan's prosperity and safety for 10 lifetimes. After that, we don't owe each other anything. This is my goal. You don't need to have any doubts." As he said this, he pointed to the spirit pill in his hand and said, "The spirit pill in your hand is a treasure that everyone in the cultivation world dreams of. It is even more impossible for mortals to have the chance to obtain it. I will use this spirit pill to extend your life by at least 50 years in exchange for your Shi clan's promise to ensure my Yu clan's prosperity and safety for 10 lifetimes. This request is not too much, is it?" Shi Wenguang quickly calculated in his heart. 1 world in exchange for 10 lifetimes of prosperity and safety for his Yu clan. This deal was definitely worth it. His eyes immediately lit up. "Mister, are you serious? Does General think that we are talking about a child's game?" Yu Qianqiu said expressionlessly. "Since that is the case, do you dare to make an oath with me?" Shi Wenguang raised a large, calloused palm. Yu Qianqiu looked at him and smiled. It seemed that this guy also knew that cultivators could not casually make oaths. He actually wanted to use this to restrain himself. He nodded and said, "Why not? However, I have to say something unpleasant first. Before you seize the world, you must listen to my arrangements." Shi Wenguang said without hesitation, "Of course. Although I have millions of lions under me, I am only content with a small area. It is difficult for me to take care of the whole situation. Mister, on the other hand, must have a plan in mind. You will definitely make proper arrangements." Shi Wenguang absolutely believes in Mister's ability. "That is great. Only the general understands me." Yu Qianqiu waved his palm and slapped his palm. Their 10 fingers intersected and clasped together. Shi Wenguang said in a deep voice, "If Mister can help my Shi clan control the world's divine weapon, my Shi clan will ensure the Yu clan's prosperity and safety for 10 lifetimes. If I go against this oath, my Shi clan will not have a good ending. I, Yu Qianqiu, will help the Shi clan to ascend to the top of the world in exchange for 10 lifetimes of prosperity and safety for the Yu clan's descendants. If I go against this oath, I will be punished by the heavens." Yu Qianqiu said with a faint smile, "Is General at ease now?" After the two of them let go of each other, Shi Wenguang stuffed the spirit pill in his other hand into his mouth and swallowed it without saying a word. He used his actions to show that he no longer had any doubts. Then, he laughed out loud and said, "Servants, serve wine and dishes." Yu Qianqiu wanted to help him completely stimulate the medicinal effects of the spirit pill, but he was interrupted. He thought about it and gave up on this idea. He muttered to himself, "Going too far is as bad as falling short." After waiting for a while, there was no response from outside. The two of them looked at each other and were stunned. They walked to the door and lifted the curtain together. They saw that everyone within 30 meters outside had retreated completely. Shi Wenguang smiled bitterly and said, "Mister's subordinates are indeed well trained." As soon as he said this, Yu Qianqiu immediately understood. His subordinates knew that he wanted to say something private and was afraid that it would be heard by outsiders. Even the guards in the vicinity had been cleared away. How efficient! He smiled awkwardly and said, "It's good that there's no one around. I happen to have something that I need General's help with." The two of them looked outside and put down the curtain at the same time. They walked back side by side, and the misunderstanding from before was completely gone. Shi Wenguang asked, "What do you need me to do, mister? I heard that General has many experts who are good at disguising themselves." I have a group of people who want to use this technique to change their appearance, Yu Qianqiu said. Shi Wingguang was surprised and said, with Mr. Supernatural Power, isn't it easy to change your appearance? Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and said, does General really think that people in the cultivation world are living gods who can change their appearance at any time? Hee hee. That's easy. I don't dare to guarantee other things, but when it comes to disguising, it's not a problem at all. I've been fighting here for many years, and in order to spy on the enemy, disguising is the most common method. Shi Wingguang smiled and asked, I wonder if Mr. wants to directly put on makeup or use a human skin mask to change your appearance. You have human skin masks here. Yu Qianqiu was slightly surprised. He had never come into contact with such a thing, and he felt that it was a little strange. When two armies fight, death is a common occurrence. Naturally, there's no lack of human skin, Shi Wingguang said indifferently. Yu Qianqiu gulped and asked which one is more convenient to use. Although he wasn't afraid, he subconsciously rejected it. Who would like to stick dead people's skin on their face? Of course it's convenient to use a human skin mask. When you don't want to use it, you can just take it off and stick it on again. It's not like makeup. Once you take it off and want to change your appearance again, if you don't know how to do it yourself, you'll have to bring along people who know how to change their appearance, and it's also time-consuming, Shi Wingguang explained. Damn it. Looks like I really have to use that disgusting thing. Yu Qianqiu coughed and said, then I'll have to trouble General to prepare a few reliable disguising experts for me. Make sure to keep it a secret and don't let the news leak. The next day, a large tent was suddenly erected in the Western military camp. There were more than 60 people sitting cross-legged inside. They were the 30 Special Forces members led by Hong Qi and Gu Qingyun respectively. More than 10 soldiers who were good at disguising were meticulously taking their measurements. For something like a human skin mask, if the size was not suitable, then it would be a big problem. Anyone could tell at a glance that it was a disguise. Ever since Zhang Ping arrived, he hadn't said a word. Yu Qianqiu didn't care about him. He knew that he was reminiscing about the past, so he pulled an old soldier aside and kept asking questions. Master, you have to help me make it look better. The nose needs to be like this, and a little higher. Yes, just like this. After constant modification, Yu Qianqiu picked up a picture, shook his head, and praised, indeed a handsome and elegant man. Why do I feel that he looks a little familiar? Shi Wingguang was really speechless. The human skin mask was originally used to hide one's original appearance. It was fine as long as it didn't reveal anything. Why would there be so many requirements? Under normal circumstances, it was better to be as low-key as possible. Who would deliberately make themselves so conspicuous? This guy was really different. Who does he look like? Yu Qianqiu held the picture and muttered. Suddenly, his expression froze, and he screamed, damn it. It's that old bastard Nongzhu. It turned out that he had been so focused on making himself more handsome that he had unknowingly chosen the most handsome guy he had ever seen. He had accidentally stolen Nongzhu's innate copyright. Although he only looked 70 to 80% like Nongzhu, he was already handsome enough. Why don't we make some changes and make it a little uglier? The old soldier asked in an inquiring tone. There's no need to make it ugly. Let's just make do with it. It'll be too troublesome to change it. Just make a few more of it according to this style. Yu Qianqiu shoved the picture to the old soldier. The old soldier accepted the order verbally, but in his heart, he was cursing, so you know how to be afraid of trouble. I thought you were going to change it by a few days. The sizes of Hong Qi and the other two's masks had already been prepared. All they had to do was wait for the real thing to be made. Yu Qianqiu looked at the three people in front of him. He took out 2 jade archives and handed one to Hong Qi and Gu Qingyun, saying, "Inside are some people who can help you during critical moments. Remember, rely on yourself for everything. Don't trouble others unless it's absolutely necessary." Yes. The two gladly accepted the order. Chapter 458. During this period of time, Yu Qianqiu, who had caused a storm in the Chinese cultivation world, had disappeared. He had disappeared completely. He had left without a trace. Ever since he left the Huaxia Cultivation Alliance, the Daluo sect decided to fight him to the death because they couldn't allow such an enemy to grow. It was too dangerous. Therefore, they sent many people to search openly and secretly, but they couldn't find a trace of him. Someone commented, "He came and left quietly. He didn't take anything with him and only left a bunch of enemies." No matter what others said, in a room in the Myriad Fragrance Garden on Fuxian Island, Yu Qianqiu was sleeping soundly while hugging a soft and tender body. Inside the brocade quilt, half of Hibiscus's delicate body was exposed. She opened her eyes wide and looked at his sleeping posture. Suddenly, she giggled and stretched out her 2 slender fingers to pinch his nose. She didn't let him breathe because the noise coming from that place was very loud. Yu Qianqiu, who had his nose pinched, didn't even open his eyes. He made a cat's voice through his nose and said, "Serious warning, if you don't let me breathe through my nose, I will be very angry. Once I get angry, the consequences will be very serious. Are you going to let go?" "No, I definitely won't let go." Hibiscus giggled. However, his hand had already touched a certain sensitive part of her body. It made her tremble and she couldn't laugh anymore. "Last warning, if you don't let go, you will face severe punishment. Are you going to let go?" Yu Qianqiu said righteously. Hibiscus quickly retracted her hand and hid under the quilt. Yu Qianqiu opened his eyes and said with a naughty smile, "I forgot to tell you, if you dare to bully my people in bed, even if you let go, I won't let you go. Little vixen, hand over your life." With that said, he suddenly buried himself under the quilt. Suddenly, there was a messy sound coming from the bed. It seemed like Hibiscus was crying for help in a very coquettish manner. After a long time, the two of them had enough fun. Both of them weakly hugged each other and poked their heads out. Yu Qianqiu kept asking her about Fuxian Island. Hearing Furong's answers, he suddenly pushed her away and looked at her seriously. "Come with me, I'll take you out of here." The room instantly became silent. Furong widened her eyes and asked weakly, "Are you going to take me away from Fuxian Island?" She seemed to be lacking in confidence. Her delicate body was trembling uncontrollably, which meant that she was a little nervous about leaving supporting Immortal Island. "Right, I will bring you out of Fuxian Island. It is time for you to go out and have a walk. This broken island shouldn't trap you for the rest of your life." Yu Qianqiu looked at her with a pitiful expression. He caressed her hair to console her. "I'm afraid that if I go out, I won't be able to find the way back." As Hibiscus spoke, she grabbed onto Yu Qianqiu's arm tightly. It was as though she was grabbing onto her last life-saving straw. Her eyes were filled with fear and unease. "How can that be? Don't you still have me?" Yu Qianqiu tried his best to smile very gently, hoping to give her a smile that would make her feel at ease. "I heard from the female senior in the garden that there is a kind of man in this world that is like the wind. When he comes suddenly, and when he leaves immediately. He won't stay. Women will never be able to accompany him. You came very suddenly and left just like that. Could you be that man who is like the wind?" The more Hibiscus spoke, the softer her voice became. She didn't dare to look at him directly. She was afraid that he would be unhappy because of what she said. "Ah. There is such a flashy saying. Damn, which slut said that? Yu Qianqiu said in astonishment. He looked at Hibiscus, who seemed to have done something wrong. He placed his hand on her smooth and soft waist and shook it. Look at me. An. Hibiscus looked at him in confusion. She saw Yu Qianqiu stretch out a palm and solemnly say, I, Yu Qianqiu, swear to the heavens that as long as Hibiscus doesn't despise me, don't hate me, I, Yu Qianqiu, will never abandon her in this lifetime. I will never let her get lost. After swearing, Hibiscus's eyes instantly brightened. They were filled with indescribable joy. She suddenly hugged him fiercely like an octopus. She nodded repeatedly and said, I will never despise you, never hate you. I'll go with you. Cough cough, smelly woman, you're strangling me to death. Quickly let go. I'm willing. I'll strangle you to death. I'll strangle you, smelly man. Just as Hibiscus's coquettish words finished, a slap landed on her butt. Hibiscus immediately retaliated strongly. The bed became a mess again. The blankets couldn't cover her anymore. TSK TSK. That was like the radiance of spring. All right, all right. Stop fighting, stop fighting. I admit defeat. After a long time, Yu Qianqiu grabbed Hibiscus's hands and said with a bitter smile. Not to mention that this seemingly frail woman had a peerless weapon in her possession, this was the first time he discovered that she actually had such exuberant energy. She could torment someone to death. Hibiscus didn't say anything else and leaned over again. Yu Qianqiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Hibiscus, we can't always laze around in bed. If you want to go with me, shouldn't you tell your father first? Speaking of this, Hibiscus's expression became hesitant again. She said embarrassedly, he keeps saying that you're a little heartless. What if he doesn't let me go with you? Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows. His expression immediately softened. That was his future father-in-law. If he scolded him, so be it. He awkwardly smiled and said, you go and tell him. With me here, he won't stop you. Go quickly, we're in a hurry. N. Hibiscus was very confident in him. She nodded and immediately got out of the quilt to put on her clothes. Yu Qianqiu leaned sideways with his head propped up to admire. With such a graceful beauty accompanying him, this life was not in vain. After watching Hibiscus go out, he was suddenly shocked and quickly got up to put on his clothes. Ferdinand knew that he was going to take his daughter away, so he would definitely come to question him. He couldn't let others see him lying naked on his daughter's bed. Ferdinand was as angry as ever. In fact, he knew that Yu Qianqiu came. He was just about to go to the backyard to see his daughter. Who knew that the door was closed and there were some muffled sounds inside? How could he not know who came? The reason why Ferdinand was angry was that he suspected that this kid had ulterior motives. Otherwise, how could he do that with his daughter every time he came? It was too outrageous. He was simply unscrupulous and condescending. This brat's notorious behavior had already forced him to clear out the entire backyard as his daughter's territory. Even he himself had to find someone else to temporarily stay with, let alone the others. What was the use of being angry? Who asked his precious daughter to like him? Who asked him to owe his daughter too much? He really didn't dare to make her a little unhappy. Ferdinand sighed helplessly. This brat, Yu Qianqiu, had taken away the most precious thing in his life. His daughter's face was still full of lust and happiness. What else could he say? Father, Yu Qianqiu asked you to go over. Hibiscus said shyly. She wanted to say that she wanted to go with Yu Qianqiu, but she didn't dare to say it when the words were on the tip of her tongue. She simply threw the trouble to Yu Qianqiu. If this sentence was heard by Yu Qianqiu would be so grateful that he would cry bitterly and shout. Sister! How can I be a man if you do this? Sure enough, when Ferdinand heard this, he was so angry that smoke came out of his 7 orifices. His body trembled and his eyes were wide open. That bastard had just done that with my daughter. Now he actually sent my daughter over and asked me to go over to see him. This was simply unreasonable. Ferdinand was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Seeing that his hair and beard were trembling, his eyes were red, and his body was trembling, Hibiscus asked doubtfully, "Father, what's wrong with you?" The word father was like a cooling agent that immediately made Ferdinand feel much better. Hibiscus usually didn't call him father. She would only call him like this when it was related to Yu Qianqiu. But how could this anger be so easily dispelled? Ferdinand slammed the table with a bang. Like a tiger that was about to eat people, he stood up and shouted angrily, "Okay, I'll go and see this great god." Yu Qianqiu was doing chest expansion exercises in the small garden in the backyard. He was so refreshed. In the blink of an eye. "Oh, my future father-in-law is here." When Yu Qianqiu just put on a smiling face and was ready to welcome him, he suddenly found that something was wrong. Why is Ferdinand's face as black as Lord Bao's? Is he poisoned? Hibiscus's expression was also a little nervous. Countless thoughts turned in an instant, but she didn't expect Hibiscus's words to spoil everything. But she still smiled and bowed, "Senior Fei. You're good, Yu Qianqiu." Ferdinand's hand trembled. He pointed his finger and shouted, I'll kill you." Then he slammed his palm on Yu Qianqiu's head. "Damn!" Yu Qianqiu quickly dodged. Bang! A pit had already appeared on the ground. "Ah!" Hibiscus screamed and flashed to Yu Qianqiu's side to block. Ferdinand didn't say anything and didn't care about his daughter. He was so angry that his eyes turned red. He raised his palm and slammed it toward the 2 people. Yu Qianqiu hurriedly hugged Hibiscus and dodged together. The garden was suddenly in a mess. It was really a pit with 1 palm. "Old thing, if you don't stop, don't blame me for being rude." Yu Qianqiu hugged Hibiscus and dodged here and there. He was in a mess. With his current cultivation, he didn't need to be afraid of Ferdinand at all. However, it also depended on who he was dealing with. Good. I want to see how you are going to be rude." Ferdinand was so angry that he laughed. He moved his finger, and a cold light flew out of the storage bag. A flying sword stood in the air. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and quickly turned Hibiscus behind him to protect her. He said in a deep voice, "Ferdinand, are you serious? Did you take the wrong medicine? What did I do to make you so angry? Even if I want to take Hibiscus away, you don't need to be so angry. You don't even care about your daughter's life. You're an unreasonable, ruthless, and shameless person. I swear. I swear." Ferdinand was stunned on the spot. He was mute for a long time before he said in shock, "What did you say? You want to take Hibiscus away?" Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and looked back at Hibiscus, who was staring at her father. He turned his head and asked suspiciously, "Didn't Hibiscus tell you just now?" Chapter 459. Ferdinand looked at his daughter and was a little confused. "Since I didn't tell you, why are you so angry?" Yu Qianqiu was also a little confused and thought, "Don't tell me you only know about me and your daughter today. You created such a quiet environment to have an affair." Unable to figure it out, he turned back and asked again, "Furong, what did you say to your father?" Furong was bashful. "Didn't you ask me to come to see you?" Ferdinand asked, and the flying sword had been taken back. What are you talking about? If I want to see you, I should go to see you. How can I ask you to come over?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned and thought, I am not that thick-skinned. I just did it with your daughter and then immediately asked you to come to see me. Isn't this insulting? The two men's eyes returned to Furong again. Yu Qianqiu asked suspiciously, didn't you tell your father about this? I called my father. You should tell him. Furong pulled his sleeve. The two men immediately looked at each other and understood a little. It turned out that this girl's inappropriate words almost caused the father-in-law and son-in-law to fight desperately, but they still didn't know what was going on. Yu Qianqiu coughed twice and held Furong's hand awkwardly. He said to Ferdinand, Senior Ferdinand, let's forget about this. Let's get back to business. Ferdinand also coughed twice and threw the flying sword into the storage bag. He said with a somewhat unnatural expression, well, let's talk business. He thought, I have misunderstood this kid, but it doesn't matter. I have given you my daughter. It doesn't matter if I misunderstand you. I came this time to take Furong away. I hope Senior Ferdinand can help me. Yu Qianqiu said respectfully. Ferdinand's expression also became solemn. He frowned deeply and said, it's not that I don't want you to take Furong away, but do you know your current situation? There is no possibility of mediation between you and Daluo sect now. It has reached the point where you can't coexist with each other. Do you think it's safe to take Furong with you? Humph. Yu Qianqiu sneered. Daluo sect. Let them jump around for now. Sooner or later, I will remove their names from the cultivation world. You don't have to worry about this. If I can't guarantee Furong's safety, I won't take her away. Remove the Daluo sect from the cultivation world. Ferdinand was speechless. Even Fu Xian Island did not dare to say such words. He shook his head and sighed, young and frivolous. Do you really think that a sect that has stood in the cultivation world for thousands of years is really that simple? The sect's roots run deep, and the things inside are definitely not things that outsiders can easily understand. Those old monsters who became famous many years ago, although they no longer appear, who dares to say that they are already dead? No matter how deep the roots are, I will still uproot them. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and smiled, Senior Fei, don't worry. There won't be any danger for Furong to follow me. I'm prepared to bring her to travel around and let her gain some experience. Staying on Fuxian Island for the rest of her life isn't a solution. As he spoke, he gently held Furong in his arms with a face full of pity. Furong nodded at her father seriously, her eyes begging for her father's consent. Ferdinand's heart instantly softened. He shook his head and sighed. Fine, fine. As long as you treat my daughter well, I don't care about anything else. But I'll say this first. If you let anything happen to Furong, I'll make you pay even if I have to sacrifice this old life of mine. Senior Fei, I won't say anything unnecessary. I'll take your daughter away today, and I'll give you a promise. Yu Qianqiu said with a solemn expression, I'll protect Furong with all my heart for the rest of her life. I won't bully her, and no one else can bully her either. Whoever dares to touch her will have to die. Furong, who was in his arms, immediately let out a whimper and hugged his waist tightly. Good, good, good. Ferdinand nodded repeatedly and asked with great relief, where are you going to take Furong to travel? If I have time, I'll go see you guys. Yu Qianqiu looked at Furong lovingly and said, I'll take her to travel around the countries and let her see the customs of the foreign lands. I hope Senior Fei can keep this a secret for me. Okay. What did you say? Ferdinand laughed halfway and suddenly choked on his throat. He said in exasperation, going to a foreign country. Are you crazy? You killed a few foreign cultivators in the 100 Flowers Valley, and the Yen father and son have enmity with you. You're courting death by going there. Senior Fei. Yu Qianqiu shouted loudly and then said with a smile, please leave Furong to me with peace of mind." He lowered his head and asked Furong, "Are you afraid?" Furong shook her head. Her eyes flickered as she looked at Ferdinand, still looking pitiful and pleading. Ferdinand opened his mouth for a while and finally stomped his feet heavily. Sigh. "You guys. What do you want me to say?" "Furong, let's say goodbye to your father." Yu Qianqiu pulled Furong away and the two of them faced Ferdinand side by side and bowed deeply. Yu Qianqiu said with a smile, "Senior Fei, please take care of yourself. I'll bring Furong back to see you in the future." "You guys." Ferdinand was speechless looking at the two of them. Yu Qianqiu pulled Furong into his arms again and said with a light smile, "Close your eyes. Don't open them until I say something." Furong heavily nodded her head and subconsciously held him tightly. She also closed her eyes tightly. She knew that Yu Qianqiu was about to use that shadowless and traceless magic technique. Yu Qianqiu smiled faintly and could not help but kiss her smooth forehead gently. Then, the two of them suddenly disappeared on the spot. Ferdinand's eyes widened as he realized something very strange. He looked around and released his divine sense to search around, but there was no sign of anyone. Even an expert at the final stage of the tribulation stage could not teleport with a person. Ferdinand stood in the garden for a long time. Did his daughter just leave him like this? Then, he let out a sigh of relief. Since Yu Qianqiu had such remarkable power, it should not be a problem for him to protect himself with Furong when he encountered danger. No wonder he was so confident. No wonder old ancestor Qing Nu could not catch him back then. Although Furong was the daughter of the principal elder of Wanfen Garden, she rarely met anyone in the entire Fuxian Island. Her disappearance would probably not be noticed or cared by anyone in the entire Fuxian Island. Of course, Ferdinand, who was in a daze at the moment, was full of disappointment as if someone had cut out a piece of flesh from his heart. Yu Qianqiu teleported to a secret place in Utopia with Hibiscus. After settling down for a while, they disappeared again. When they reappeared, they were already in an empty military camp, and there were endless sounds of large-scale people training and killing outside. Yu Qianqiu looked at Furong, who was hugging him tightly in his arms, and a smirk appeared on his face. He broke free from her and stood at the side. Furong's face was immediately filled with uneasiness. She stood at the same place and did not dare to move. Her hands were touching everywhere, but her eyes were closed tightly. It was obvious that she listened to Yu Qianqiu's instructions and did not dare to open her eyes out of fear. Yu Qianqiu did not dare to scare her, so he quickly said, "All right, open your eyes." The first thing Furong did when she opened her eyes was not to look at the surrounding environment, but to quickly walk over and grab Yu Qianqiu's arm. Then, she widened her eyes and looked around. She asked with some uneasiness, "Where are we?" "Don't be afraid. This is a secular military camp. Let's go. I'll take you out to take a look." Yu Qianqiu held her hand and pulled her out of the tent. The sun was shining brightly outside, but dust was flying everywhere. The army was training non-stop. Bright armor, long spears, and steeds galloped forward. It was a grand and magnificent sight. Furong looked at all of this curiously. This was something she had never seen before. Yu Qianqiu was like a little pet as he pulled her around. She turned her head around, as if she could never get enough of seeing. A woman who had not been tainted by the secular world was like a fairy that had descended from the heavens in this military camp. She was so outstanding. In the cultivation world, any woman with a bit of aptitude would not have bad looks, let alone Furong, who was extremely beautiful. A group of men could not help but want to take a few more glances. However, the state pillar general was strict with his troops, and no one dared to be impudent during training. After walking one round, Yu Qianqiu brought Furong to the central tent. Shi Wingguang and his son, who were discussing military matters, were stunned when they saw Farong. They secretly praised in their hearts, "What a beautiful and delicate woman." Shi Wingguang asked with some doubt, "This young lady is my woman?" Yu Qianqiu smiled faintly, then turned to Shi Yintian and said, "I'll have to trouble young general to find the old master who helped me change my appearance. I'll trouble him again. Mr. is too polite, I'll go right away." Shi Yintian cupped his fists towards Farong and said, "Greetings, madam." Farong was a little scared and shrank back. Yu Qianqiu patted her hand and said, "Don't be afraid, they are all my friends." He then turned to Shi Yintian and apologized, "Young general, please don't be offended. She has never been in the secular world before and is afraid to meet strangers." "It's fine." Shi Yintian awkwardly cupped his fists and left. Shi Wingguang looked at Farong for a while and saw that her eyes were filled with innocence. Clearly, it was as Yu Qianqiu said, she had never seen the world before, so he didn't bother to be polite. He immediately raised his hand and said, "Mr. and Madam, please sit." Yu Qianqiu led Farong to sit on the side and asked, "How are the preparations?" Shi Wingguang walked down and sat opposite the two of them. He replied, "Mister, don't worry, everything has been arranged. Once Mr. goes there, there will naturally be someone to receive you." "Good." Yu Qianqiu nodded. At present, because of the war between the cultivation world and the cultivation world of China, the defense of the borders was quite tight. It was estimated that the cultivation world on both sides had sent cultivation world experts to guard. It would not be easy to fly over without being discovered. Because they were bringing Farong along, for safety's sake, Shi Wingguang arranged for a caravan to bring some silver balls over. When the time came, they would naturally be safe. While they were talking, Shi Yintian had already brought the old soldier over. Yu Qianqiu immediately arranged for him to measure Farong's face. Although Farong didn't know what to do, she naturally wouldn't object to Yu Qianqiu's arrangement. After the measurements were done, Yu Qianqiu and the old soldier discussed for a long time and finally decided on an inconspicuous design for Farong. Shi Wingguang was speechless. This guy made himself so conspicuous, but he made his woman, cough cough. However, after thinking about it, it was understandable. At this time, if he made a woman too conspicuous, it would definitely attract trouble. Chapter 460. The bright moon hung in the sky, the stars dotted the sky, the world was vast and deep. Not far from the military camp, at the foot of a barren hillside, Yu Qianqiu looked at the 60 people lined up neatly in front of him. He stared for a long time, thinking about how many of these people would survive in the end. However, where there is struggle, there is sacrifice, this is inevitable. Hibiscus hid behind Yu Qianqiu and quietly poked half of her head out, curiously sizing up this group of people. From the fact that this group of people flew close to the ground at high speed without any help, she could tell that they were all experts at the early stage of the crossing calamity realm. What made her most curious was that this group of experts seemed to be very respectful to Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu let go of Hibiscus's hand, walked in front of Gu Qingyun, and said with a smile, "I have always admired you, so I gave you a chance. I hope I did not misjudge you." Gu Qingyun slightly bowed, did not say anything. Yu Qianqiu punched his chest, sighed, and said, "Work hard, fight hard. One day you will realize that the opportunity one gave you is much better than what Fuxian Island gave you." With that said, he waved his hand at everyone and said, "Let's go." He turned around and walked back, pulling Hibiscus up the hillside. Hong Qi shouted from behind, "Master." He ran over, but it was unknown what he wanted to say. Yu Qianqiu said without turning his head, "I have said what I need to say to you, you are not a child anymore, go on your own." Zhang Peng moved in a flash to block in the middle, stretched out his hand to stop them, and said, "Senior brother, please go back." Although he was older than Hong Qi, he became his disciple later, so he still had to call him senior brother. Hong Chi helplessly stopped. He turned around and exchanged a glance with Gu Qingyun before nodding. Both of them waved their hands and lightly shouted, "Let's go." The group of people split into two groups and flew in two different directions. Since the border area was guarded by people from the cultivation world, they did not dare to fly too high. On the hillside under the moonlight, the three of them stopped and watched. After everyone disappeared into the night, Yu Qianzhou sighed and said, "Let's go back and rest for the night. We'll set off tomorrow." Although he said he was resting, Yu Qianzhou couldn't fall asleep no matter what. Shi Wenguang gave them a separate place to rest and surrounded it with a fence. Yu Qianzhou was practicing the animal show in the fence, as if he was possessed. If he didn't rest, Furong wouldn't be able to. She moved a small military stool and sat under the tent. She supported her chin with her hands and watched curiously. Zhang Peng had been standing guard outside the tent all along, taking the initiative to guard his master. At this moment, he was silently watching his master's every move. In his memory, his master had been able to dissolve his attack with a single finger. Until now, he had never seen a second person who could do that, and he had always admired him endlessly. Therefore, he believed that what his master was practicing now was definitely not something simple, so he watched very carefully. The moonlight shone down on Yu Qianzhou. After practicing for a while inside the fence, he felt the inexplicable feeling of depression in his heart dissipate. He suddenly felt as if there was nothing between heaven and earth. His heart was as calm as still water, and only the scenes of the animal show kept flashing through his mind. The movements he practiced became smoother and smoother. Gradually, his movements became as smooth as floating clouds in flowing water, and a sense of beauty slowly appeared in his movements. This was the first time he found such a comfortable pleasure from practicing that animal show. When he spread his arms, it was as if he was a goshawk patrolling the blue dome of heaven, looking for prey. When he bent his fingers, it was as if he was a mantis that only needed to catch a cicada. That feeling was really wonderful. Furong, who was sitting on the stool, felt that his movements were getting better and better. On the other hand, Zhang Peng's expression gradually became serious. There was a thoughtful look in his eyes, indicating that he seemed to have noticed something. Gradually, there was a trace of surprise in his eyes, and he watched attentively without blinking, as if he was afraid of missing any details. Only when the first rays of dawn appeared, and the neighing of the warhorses became chaotic, did Yu Qianzhou wake up from his own world. He only felt that the meridians in his body were incomparably comfortable, and his whole body was also refreshed. After returning to the tent, he took off his sweaty clothes, and activated the water art. A clear stream enveloped him and washed him. Dayang Empire's territory was only a few tenths of the size of the Hua Xia Empire, but it was one of the countries that had been at war with the Hua Xia Empire for a long time. The capital of the empire was called Dayang City. Although it couldn't compare to the capital of Hua Xia, it was still very prosperous. After all, it was still the capital of a country. On the bustling main street of the imperial capital, there was an inn called Welcome Inn. In the whole of Dayang City, it couldn't be considered a big inn. Fortunately, the price was fair, and business was booming. Today, after several groups of guests who wanted to stay in the inn entered, they all left in disappointment. There was no other reason, but the reason was that someone had booked the entire inn. The inn's backyard was clean and tidy, and it was empty for a group of guests who had suddenly arrived. This group of guests was none other than Yu Qianzhou and his two companions. This inn looked ordinary, but its background was not simple. It was a place that Shi Wenguang had planted here for a long time. The inn's owner was surnamed Sang, and he had long received news from Shi Wenguang. However, he didn't expect that just as he received the news and prepared, the people would arrive without a sound. It was simply unimaginable. However, he knew that there were some things that he shouldn't ask about. He only needed to cooperate with the people who had arrived. After Yu Qianzhou and his companions put on the human skin masks, their appearances had completely changed. Yu Qianzhou himself had long since become a handsome and dashing young master. Shi Wingguang didn't know where in the military camp he had found a folding fan for Yu Qianzhou. Furong, on the other hand, was in a worse state. She was thin to begin with, and her pale complexion made it seem as if she had been ill for a long time. Her appearance was also sloppy and ordinary, completely concealing her beauty. At this moment, in a room in the backyard, a box filled with jade archives was placed on a large table. Yu Qianzhou fanned himself with a folding fan, looking very narcissistic. He took out a jade archive, imbued it with his divine sense, and then reported the name of a country. Furong, who was sprawled in front of the table, took a pen and ticked off the corresponding country's name on the leather scroll. Baiwan Nation. After reporting this name, Yu Qianzhou was slightly taken aback. He recalled that Zi had mentioned this country before. It seemed that Wen Lanfeng, the second strongest expert in the world, resided in this country. He couldn't help but take a closer look. Only then did he realize that Wen Lanfeng was actually a member of the royal family. The royal family of Baiwan Nation was surnamed Wen. Thus, he skimmed through the general situation of the Wen royal family and silently committed it to memory. When he reported Dian Nation, he looked through it again. After all, he was now in the imperial city of Dian Nation, so he had to understand a little bit more. Furong had already found the box. Seeing that Yu Qianzhou was reading attentively, she didn't disturb him. She bit the tip of her pen and waited quietly. The royal family of Dian Nation is surnamed Zhao. Yu Qianzhou muttered. He put down the scroll in his hand and took out another jade archive to report. After spending the entire morning, the two of them finally went through all the jade archives. At the same time, Yu Qianzhou's mind was filled with many things. After putting the jade archives away, Yu Qianzhou asked, "See if there are any countries that haven't been ticked off." Furong eagerly hugged the cowhide scroll and easily found it. She pointed to the two countries at the top of the scroll and said, "The Huaxia Empire and the Tuan Empire." Yu Qianzhou leaned over to take a look. The Huaxia Empire was first, and the Tuan Empire was second. This list of countries was arranged according to the size of their territories. In other words, the Tuan Empire was the country with the largest territory among all the foreign countries. Yu Qianzhou tapped his finger on the Tuan Empire's name. He chuckled coldly and said, "I've been looking for a long time." "So it's you." Furong turned to look at him. She didn't know why he was looking for the Tuan Empire. Just then, someone outside suddenly said, "It's almost noon. I wonder what my esteemed guests would like to eat. Please let me know so that I can prepare in advance." "Is that Boss Sang?" Yu Qianzhou took the cowhide scroll from the table and tossed it into his storage pouch. He walked over to open the door and saw Zhang Ping blocking the boss's way. Zhang Ping was a huge man to begin with. His block blocked the entire door. When he saw his master come out, he quickly moved to the side. Yu Qianzhou gently fanned himself. He looked at the amiable middle-aged man in front of him. No matter how he looked at him, he looked like a businessman. Who would have thought that he was a spy? Yu Qianzhou's smiling eyes revealed a sense of scrutiny. Occasionally, he would reveal a sharp and threatening glint. The aura of a superior was faintly discernible. It was as if he viewed human lives as nothing more than grass. Mortals were indeed nothing in his eyes. Boss Sang felt a chill run down his spine under his gaze. He thought to himself, "Oh my." He didn't know who this person was. One look and he could tell that he was someone who had been through a lot of bloodshed. Moreover, he was the kind of person who wielded power. Boss Sang might be a small boss in the marketplace, but he was used to seeing all kinds of people in the marketplace. When it came to judging people, ordinary people couldn't compare to him. At the same time, he also knew that this person had an extraordinary background. Otherwise, he wouldn't have received a secret order so quickly. Moreover, the secret order was even stamped with the great general's personal seal. "Sir." Boss Sang nodded and bowed with a smile. Then, he quickly glanced at Zhangpeng. Judging from his strong physique, the calluses on his hands, and the look in his eyes, which were used to seeing life and death, this person was most likely from the military. "As for the food, you can make it as you see fit." Yu Qianqiu smiled faintly and folded his fan. He pointed to the courtyard and said, "Just set it up here. I'll have a few drinks with Boss Sang and ask him some questions." "I wouldn't dare." "Sir, please ask away." Boss Sang smiled respectfully. "Humph." Zhangpeng snorted coldly. "Just do as Sir says." "What's with all the nonsense?" "Zhangpeng, don't be rude." Yu Qianqiu reprimanded. Zhangpeng slightly folded his hands and said nothing, but his eyes were still fixed on Boss Sang. Boss Sang immediately nodded and said, "Very well. We'll do as Sir says. I'll go prepare now." With that, he turned around and quickly left. Yu Qianqiu watched him leave. Just as he was about to turn around and enter the house, he suddenly heard the sound of an argument coming from outside. Then, he heard the sound of things being smashed and Boss Sang's kind words of advice. He couldn't help but frown. Zhangpeng bowed and said, "Sir, I'll go take a look." Before they came, they had already discussed it. Master had changed the way he addressed Boss Sang to Sir. There was no need for him to look. A dozen or so valiant black-clothed servants had already barged into the courtyard through the curved door. A handsome young man in snow-white clothes slowly walked out from the crowd, waving a white folding fan in his hand. Yu Qianqiu exchanged a glance with him. Both of them were slightly stunned and subconsciously looked at the folding fan in their hands. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.